What is up, JG603, owner and operator of TSW Wrestling? We are back, but not with matches today, as it's time to discuss, finally, the two sweeties. Let's get right to the chase. We've got our voting up. Let's dive on in, baby, and let's get it. All right, so first and foremost at the top just kind of gives you a breakdown, but we skipped that because it also includes putting in my email, and you guys don't need to see that. But right away, we'll get into things. So first and foremost, I think it goes without saying a few things. We'll start filling this out, by the way. Each opinion's their own. There's also going to be matches, moments, and overarching things that I'm going to forget. Me and Dargan put this together. We didn't do any of this live. So the chances are there's going to be some glaring omission and we're going to go, how'd we fuck that up? But cross that road when we get there. There are write-ins for each category as well. But let's get on into it. So first of all, match of the year. I think the easy thing to do for many people is to pick the Royal Rumble. I do think many people would like to do that, but to me, there are some very meaningful matches. Not that the Rumble's not meaningful, but of course, I mean, you talk about LBJ versus Vibe and how many times we went through that cell. Absolutely incredible. But to me, when you add the stakes, when you add the match, and you add the moment, I think out the gate here, I'm picking Young versus Finn. And I think Young's gonna get some heavy shouts throughout this process for me. But, of course, plenty of other write-ins, you know, a lot of people have their own soup du jour, you know, so to speak. But to me, I think these are some of the best picks. Pardon, let me get my fan a little bit more on me here. But let's keep going on. Of course, if you do want to write something, you just click the other, you type here and put it in now. Of course, write-ins, very tough to win. But if there's something that you really think missed recognition, I think it's an opportunity to do so. Of course, I implore everybody who is voting to wait until you watch the entirety of this so I can speak through some of the categories, moments, etc. But up next, I think this one's going to be very interesting. We have Feud of the Year. I think Feud of the Year is fascinating this year because some of these are huge storylines. We're talking months on months on months on months on months. Now, out the gate, typically I throw myself in there. We'll clap versus JG's an all-timer. I think a couple of these other rivalries are a little bit above that. I mean, Emma versus Steph. Talk about an all-year storyline from essentially week one until the last week. That is certainly the longest storyline, without a doubt. But when you talk about Boxy's done some phenomenal things, and I think when we talk Feud of the Year, we're not talking just in-ring, we're not talking about what I can give you a story. I think it's important to note what they told in their stories. And Boxy, both with LBJ and then Boxy and Raw both, put together incredible stories, and I think that's incredibly important when we're thinking of Feud of the Year, what delivered the most, what sent ripples the most. Now, to me, when you bring up what had the most impact both at the time and going forward, I think it is one choice only. For me, it's Boxy versus LBJ. I think that was a huge feud going literal months and months and months and months, and even kind of percolating in other aspects as well with kind of offshoots, whether it be a Claw with Albrecht, kind of an offshoot of this Boxy LBJ feud. And of course, we'll talk later on when we get to the promos of the year, but Boxy with Special Agent Michaels and the revelation that LBJ was behind the tag. Next level. Absolutely next level. Now, obviously we could have put these in a certain order. Probably should have, but up next, Wrestler of the Year. We picked, so as you know, we picked 4 for pretty much every category because we didn't want to make it too wordy. There will be a female Wrestler of the Year category as well. So shout out to Emma and Steph, Jen, Nuggy. Didn't leave you out completely, but we kind of win for Wrestler of the Year being overarching. While I think a couple of those do have a shot against these, I mean, these are some huge names, huge storylines, huge moments, but there's no need to just waste everybody's it's Young. It's Young. It's Young. Undefeated for a lifetime, it felt. Of course, won the Royal Rumble, hardcore champion, longest reign in history, won the BMI championship, first to hold hardcore in BMI, of course won the main event of 603 Mania. To me, there's truly no way that Young is not a borderline clean sweep of this category. What a year. But the question is, Year 2 for Yunk. Okay, well, year 3 technically, and year 3 here in TSW. I think Young's going to be a big target this year. Not that he wasn't last year, but I think this year, Young's going to find himself with a huge, massive target on his back, and of course, no bigger than the man also in the voting animal. Of course, we will have the rematch on the first episode of TSW, ladies and gentlemen, and what better way to kick things off between two big daddios than make sure there is no outside interference. We're talking the one, the only, Hell in a Cell. Yes, indeed, you heard it here first. The main event of the first TSW, which should be coming either next week or the week after, will be Yunk versus Animal Heavyweight Championship rematch. But of course, when you talk about the heavyweights, you got to mention the cruiserweights. So worth noting, Cruiserweight Champion of the Year. I think that is worth noting because, of course, LBJ, a decent shot for the overall Cruiserweight of the Year. But we thought about it and we went, okay, so, you know, the BMI of the Year and the Cruiserweight of the Year should be specifically in that division. Otherwise, things get a little bogged down. Because otherwise, it's like, well, Young's BMI of the Year, but he didn't really wrestle in the BMI division. So that doesn't feel very fair to me. So we went Cruiserweight Champion of the Year. These were the biggest title reigns to me that stuck out. But, well, I'd love to pick myself. I really would. It's Clap Daddy! Of course, that brand new entrance theme as well. Big shout out to Boxy for that. It's Clap. Longest reign consecutive, longest reign combined, most reigns, left 603 Mania as Cruiserweight Champion. It's the Messiah, well, now the Messiah of Wall Street, maybe? I don't think he's no Messiah anymore. That man has turned to the dark side. But speaking of the Cruiserweight Champion of the Year, we got the BMI Champion of the Year. Again, worth denoting, we're talking mainly in that division. So, for me, Young, very little time as the BMI champion. Of course, kind of a hot shot, transitional type situation. Great run, though, as it was. And I think Prod and Joker, some good back and forth there. Prod, not as much time as Joker. Joker really had a strong run with that title. But I think, to me, it's the man who beat the man. He had the longest reign in the BMI division this year. I could double check the dates on that, but certainly out of these four, by the way, of course, Ched briefly held the title. Dargan briefly held it. A couple other people did briefly kind of bounce around with the BMI Championship this year, which, again, I say it a million times, I've got to get the title history somehow figured out. It's getting confusing by the day, especially with a hiatus here. We don't count that, you know? Yunk is not currently a 40 whatever day. No. We'll take it from the day the show ended. The only way to do this. Anyway, BMI Champion there for me. It's gonna be fun. Now this is gonna be interesting because I think this one has some really good options. We're gonna go Tag Team of the Year. Now I think there's a lot of interesting points here. Do you go with the current biggest team? Do you go with the one who had the biggest impact in the year? You know, one of these teams split since then. And of course, last year's Team of the Year, Founding Fathers, would fall to second place to the Disciples in Raw and Joker, despite having broken up since then. So kind of a bit of a flip-flop here if you're leaning between Dog Pound and Founding Fathers. But then you talk about the Brotherhood, a beautiful theme song, so well done. Of course, while Tag Team of the Year certainly have had a longer connection than many, but for me, it's over 6 months as a tag team. They might have broken up. They might not be on the best of terms. They might be facing each other for that BMI championship once again. But for me, it's the Founding Fathers. You go 6 months straight with that championship. It's guts to be them. It's guts to be. It's gotta be them. Moving right along, we've got promos of the year. Not a large quantity, but a lot of quality this year. And I tell you what, loved Vibes promo, fantastic. Raw, of course, early on with Boxy, fantastic. But two guys kept pumping out the promos week after week, month after month. We're talking Clap and Boxy. How fitting is that, by the way? But Clap, I think the strong character work is next level, but the effort, the time that Boxy put into these promos, especially with LBJ when you had the maps, well, you did it with Raw too, you know, the digital assets he included. I think promo of the year, hands down for me, it's got to be Boxy. It's got to be. It's got to be. Now, this is maybe the toughest one. This is pay-per-view of the year. It's tough. We broke up 6-0. You can't just say 6-0 they made and call it a day. You can't. You got to really go which one stood out. Do you go Rumble? And by the way, Slammiversary, all-time great show. That, of course, would be where the streak was beaten, I do believe. Slammiversary might have been the Founding Fathers falling in that tag title. But real quick, let me break down visually for me night 1 versus night 2, because to me I think it's gonna be one of those two. I think Rumble was fantastic as a show, but I think just the pomp and circumstance of 603 Mania, you kind of gotta juice that way. Of course, big moments from night 1, you're looking at the debut of Roy Bacon, you're looking at the Raw squashing Casio moment, which I'm certain we'll be touching on a little bit as well. We've got the Steph return in the open challenge. We got Clap return. And then how about that banger of a main event when we're talking Finn versus Landmark BMI Championship. Night 2, though, some next level moments. We had Luch leaving TSW. We had the Hardcore Chamber LPC's crowning moment. We got Danhausen, you are cursed. Didn't quite go his way. Nuggy crowned as champion. And how about the matches? You've got Hell in a Cell, loser leaves Wall Street, LBJ versus Vibe, and then of course Animal versus Yunk. To me, both nights electric. And I think if you mix and match, you could have put together, quote, the perfect show, but that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is saying which night is better. And to me, I think night 2 has a couple better matches, though I will say that night 1 might have had the better moments. But we're looking at the overall picture here. Now, this is one that's going to maybe cause some fights. We're talking most improved. Most improved is a fascinating category here in general, in TSW, and in chats to speak about. Most improved, does that mean you had a bad last year? Not necessarily. It means that you did things this year that were above and beyond what you'd previously accomplished. So, of course, Prod this year, first ever title ring in there as BMI champion. Some big high-end matchups. We got Vibe. What can you say? What a big run at the end of this year. Of course, the head of Wall Street, after not really having many big storylines in his first run around this year, truly blossoming. But to me, I think it comes down to two guys who took a step up, both in their TSW character, not character work, not necessarily their promos or their chat work or anything. I mean, where they are in TSW. And we're talking Z-Rock, we're talking Casio. Z-Rock, of course, longest reigning Universal Champion this year. Last year would have the Hardcore title for just a week. That would be his only title reign and his only real meaningful win in Season 1, to be honest with you. But in Season 2, of course, while losing at 6-3 Mania, I think we all probably gather that JG, sadly, has not seen the last of Z-Rock. I don't think that is remotely close to over right now. We're not in the 3rd inning, much like the Bloodline saga, but we're at least in the 7th inning stretch at the moment. I don't think it's in extras, and we're not in the 9th for sure. So that's worth noting. But then we look at Casio, and that is a guy who really, outside of some great Rumble runs, didn't get a lot of shine in Season 1 and never had that title reign. And what happens this year? Calls out Landmark through social media, has a phenomenal matchup with him. Of course, great matchups along the way with a number of top names, but it all comes down to earning that title shot, earning the Universal title shot, earning the Universal Championship. I thought the storyline with myself was electric. I think that would have been like a 5th pick for Feud of the Year for me, because I think that was a really fun storyline with, I didn't tap, I did tap, the really quick tap, the instant tap, all that stuff, really fun. But for me, I think most improved between Z-Rock and Casio, only because he never held a title last year. I'm gonna go Casio, but that is so close for me, so close. Because you look at their 603 Mania, and you're like, well, Casio obviously had a worse 603 Mania than Xerox. Xerox really back and forth. Casio, of course, very controversial in the way that went down. Maybe came in too hot, burned himself out the gate, looking for the drumstick submission. Raw countered, but we can confirm Raw will be facing Casio on the debut episode of TSW for that title rematch. And I have it on decent authority that match will be going just a little bit longer than their foray at Mania. Moving right along, title of the year. This is a tricky one. So last year would be the Tony title. Tony title would narrowly beat out the 24/7 7-Eleven European Hardcore Championship. And I do apologize, we did not put the $1 Million Championship on here, and I see that the Intercontinental is not on here. I do apologize. So I think the most prestigious, we know the hierarchy, it's going to be the heavyweight. However, to me, I think the most interesting, electrifying title week to week throughout the year, it's the number 2 from last year, probably should have won last year. We're talking 24/7 7-Eleven European Hardcore Championship. It's always defended every single show, so there's always an interest in that championship. It's never off the show. Of course, what Young did with that championship, I believe 7-8 months with that title, no, not 6-7, almost that. And the way it ended too, with a little bit of hot shot, a little bit of debut, a little bit of LPC, love to see it. Up next, we've got female wrestler of the year, and I think this is up here with one of the toughest picks because Steph, phenomenal. She has missed a lot of the year, so that's a little tricky. I think Miss Houdat, phenomenal runs, you know, would be champ. Of course, heavyweight and women's, but you know, not a well tag champion at the end of the year. I think with the heavyweight championship, not as strong as a run as Jen. Phenomenal going through the second half of the year. And you got to remember also as tag champion, we're talking about a 7-8 month reign, of course, with Jen and Molly McNuggets, aka Nuggy. Should probably have had that as Nuggy, not Molly, but that is A-okay. Of course, Molly, aka Nuggy, both of them as tag team champions, both of them with a heavyweight title this year, but it's Emma. It is. I'm sorry. Longest reign in history, both combined and solo reign. Most reigns this year. And certainly a dicey end of the year, which I do think does affect things. And I think, you know, if you shoot a Nuggy or a Jen over, I think that's not a bad shout. But I just think when we're talking, you know, no offense to the tag division, but I think the tag division versus the heavyweight got to bump a little bit there. So, you know, a lot of back and forth on this one, but for me, I think that was the best year in the women's division. Now, this is a fun one. We've got the what the fuck moment at the year of the year. So, we're going to show you them all, and I'll break them down as we go. So, we have Clap, Surprises, Boxy at Mania. They call him Johnny Clap. Clap Daddy. No one thought that he'd be back with Wall Street. What a great moment that was. Founding fathers turn on each other. Of course, Landmark doing the down and dirty move. Jealous of Phineas and Herb. Would steal Blue as well. The streak is over. Finn beats Young. That's going to be tough to beat until you look at LBJ joins Wall Street. The heel turn of LBJ kind of folded into that as well. I think is about as shocking as it gets outside of after nearly 8 months, Steph returns at 603 Mania. Probably closer to 6. But when we're talking what the fuck, I think, you know, the streak was going to end at some point. It was. I think the math of it, who hadn't faced Young, you're like, okay, if it's on a debut, Finn, he's out here. Only man who hasn't really faced him, unless like an LBJ who was heavyweight champion at the time. But like, oh, that makes all the sense in the world. But when you look at not only the most shocking moment, but the moment that I think made chat go what the fuck over anything. And by the way, Steph, I would also put, I thought we added on here, I would put Roldy returns up there even more so than the Steph return. Of course, Roldy returns beats Yunk in a shocker. But I gotta say, I've never seen chat in an upheaval and an uproar, a shock, and a true what the fuck moment as Raw Squash and Cash. I don't think a single soul would have expected that. I don't think anyone, to be honest, I don't think a lot of people appreciated it. I think it was a great character moment. I think the fallout and how this affects Casio going forward, I think is certainly worth a look back as we go forward. But to me, I think out of all these shocking moments, and you know, of course, I had a hand in all of them, naturally. I think to me, I don't know if I've ever been, again, felt the shock of chat as much as that. As well, again, Roldy beating Yunk, I think, is up here. I don't think anyone expected Roldy back, especially not marching in, defeating Yunk the way he did. But that's a good category there. I like that one. Now this one, a little interesting, but I think this is a little bit of a layup to me. We're talking manager of the year. Albrecht, there's a T at the end of there. I didn't spell check any of this. That's on me. We got Blue. You're my boy Blue, of course, alongside the founding fathers. We've got Albrecht Hahn, of course, alongside Boxy, as well as Claw through some of the year. We got Bad Year Trio, of course, always backing up in the thickest cheddar. Dadios, who did miss a lot of time this year, and then Nick Mazesco, of course, of the congregation, and it's Blue. It's Blue. Iconic manager. I mean, they all are, but I mean, you talk about that 6+ month reign. Blue, the factor into the turn. Blue got actively involved there, swinging that chair. I think Blue as a manager, absolutely. This is a good one. This is a tricky one. Entrance of the year. Okay, let's break it down. Let's go bottom and top. Dargan's Yeet, of course, that is overarching. Anytime it comes out, he's yeeting. All-time classic. Now, Emma enters a step. We're talking Halloween Havoc would end up losing the title to Mrs. Houdat that night in New Orleans. And also a bit of a shout to the Saints are coming entrance for Mrs. Houdat. But I think Emma entering a Steph was a beautiful moment. I think everybody probably a little bit thought that was Steph, because why would you think it's not? And I thought that was an all-timer moment. Clap descending from the heavens. I mean, he did a lot of times, and of course, his first true descent from the heavens, I thought a beautiful moment. And then Landmark's card 6-3 Mania. This is one that's a little bit meta. You know, I think on paper, Emma enters a Steph is so good, but then when you put in the fact, so Landmark's car at Mania, of course, he's driven out by Blue. You're my boy Blue, manager of the year. And then that vehicle, second time being seen, first time, was the main event between Landmark and Brandon 2K in my match of last year, or the first year, I should say now. That Hell in a Cell Iron Man match, of course, Finn would drive Landmark out for that match in that very vehicle. So when you add that extra layer, I think Landmark driving out like that at Mania was so sports entertaining. But nothing is more sports entertaining than you entering as your rival and then losing as your rival, technically. So for me, it's that, but I think those two are both phenomenal. Because I think the Yeet and the Descends, a little bit overarching. The other two were very much so a soul moment. And for me, while the car was a phenomenal moment, again, I would not hate you picking any of these, really. And if you might have another as well. But to me, I think it's that. Absolute chef's kiss. Also special mention to Danhausen's entrance at Mania. So this is a fun one. Song of the year. So this is for you, Boxy. I'm sure you're watching. I'm sure you're voting along. This is the Boxy category. This is solely a thank you to Boxy, essentially. What is your favorite Boxy made theme? Animal, Brotherhood, Clap, LBJ, Prod, Raw, and the TSW theme. Of course, some of these are a little bit newer, some are older, some have a little bit more simple, some more pizzazz. I think a couple, to me, I think... Let's see, we got 7 here. Let's knock half out real quick. So the TSW theme, I love the TSW theme so much. Hasn't been used a ton, and it is for the entire show, right? So part of me, song of the year, maybe I want an entrance of the year a little bit, but man, the TSW theme is so good. So good. I think some of the creativity brought in. So the rapping talent, by the way, on both Prods and Brotherhood are incredible. But I mean, Prod's technically a cover, so we'll knock that down a little. I love Animals. A little more simple. That is, I believe, the first tune. I feel like I gotta work through them. God, these are all so good though. Man, the creativity of the stingers as well, by the way, on these is making this tough. I should have thought of this category a bit more before we got here. It's gonna be a long video. It's gonna be like half an hour plus, but you know what? You guys going through this process with me, so I like to think we're doing it together. Raw's Gonna Kill You's iconic, and it's a great beat, but I do think I like the extra lyrics that come with Brotherhood, Clap, and LBJ. That's I think the best way for me to break this down for myself. And the TSW theme, I'll be honest, I don't think I've heard it enough. I have to listen to it more, which is great news. If you guys want to hear all these songs, we'll be uploading the music of TSW on the TSW YouTube in the upcoming week or so. Just want to make sure we space it away from this and the two sweeties to not bury them too much. Brotherhood, Clap, LBJ. Ah, man. God, these are iconic. I think Clap might be my favorite song just as a quick ditty, right? Quick little tune. You can't say that word anymore. What used to be another word for a little song has been ruined. Do I edit that out? But I think the creativity and the overall quality, because I think out of all these songs, one song I could and would listen to any day of the week, every day of the week, every hour of the day. And God damn you, big time TS and Sir, I hate you. But that song's so fucking good. Oh my God, it's incredible. And like, the whole thing's great, but when he breaks it down at the end, oh, I got goosies. I got goosies here about it. Now, this is an interesting one. This is debut of the year. This is not rookie of the year. This is the debut moment, per se. We'll go bottom and top again. So Mech, of course, was a mystery entrant and a multi-man. Had that incredible build-up. Dark lights. You know what I'm talking, that whole thing? And then he reveals himself. Bang. Mech, motherfucker. What a moment. I think Z King was a great debut, because I think it was very unexpected. And you know, all debuts are unexpected, but I don't think anyone thought Z King was on his way. You know, it's been heavily rumored for quite some time now. But for me, I think it's between the top two. When we talk about the moment, the meaning, and the reaction. So, the debut of the year. We're talking strictly the debut moment, and it does not get bigger than this. Which is the bigger moment? I think it's a little probably clear which is the bigger moment. We'll break this down. I think my favorite shot we've ever seen in TSW is the debut of Night Owl. So what's happening here is Animal's got the pin on Dargon, and it's got the camera cut, so you can see the ramp behind him. When music hits, and down the ramp in the background of Animal's pinfall is who turns out to be Night Owl. So you got the pin. Dargon kicks out, and then Dargon's here, Animal's here, Night Owl slides. Between them, stands up, starts lining into Animal. I could run that match 100 times. I don't think I'd ever get that moment twice. So like, for the organic beauty of the moment, I don't know if it gets better than that. But we talk about meaningful debuts. We talk about fan and chat reaction. And similar to Casio and Raw, I don't know if I've ever seen chat react quite like the debut of Roy Bacon and subsequent defeat of Rolly. I think a lot of people had some chucks and gigs on the entrance. And then the finish. So of course the hip toss from hell, be damned. You gotta remember what led up to that. Remember the devil's kiss on the outside onto a fucking ladder? You know, for example. So I think, you know, finish be damned. You've got a flamboyant, what many feel might have been a comedy character, is it? Would defeat the man to beat the man who was beaten by a man. We're talking Yunk. Roldy, of course, returned, beat Yunk, beat kind of everyone in his path. Was knocking him down. And with the chamber the next night, you're like, well, of course, he's going to retain. He's going to well, I'll be damned if Roldy not only loses to Roy Bacon, but in the chamber is now 0-3 at 603 Mania. Absolutely hellacious. But when we talk about, like I said, cinema versus meaningful moment, and I got to give the edge to Roy Bacon because I do think he won a title. End of the day, Night Owl certainly affected that match. Off the top of my head, I believe Dragonn won that match. That was so goddamn long ago, but I mean, we're talking 603 Mania. You know, it's the biggest, the grandest stage of them all. It's got to be that. And now as we get down to the final category or two, maybe last, Rookie of the Year. Oh, there's a couple more. Rookie of the Year is really tough. I think this is the toughest category. Now, we didn't write everyone who debuted this year, I think, because these were just the initial, like, came to mind, won championships, did this, did that, the other. If you go, what about Yunk? Yunk wrestled more than 5 matches in the previous season, so is not recognized as a rookie this year. We didn't run a Rookie of the Year last year because everyone was rookies last year. So we got to go where they are right now. We'll go top to bottom on this one. We kept going bottom to top, felt weird, hurt my brain. Mecha Monster, of course, a dominant run with the Dog Pound as tag team champions, and reigning defending Mr. Money in the Bank. That is impressive. LeBron, trios champion, multiple cruiserweight champions, and honestly, one of my favorite mini kind of like, I mean, it wasn't that short of you, but man, LeBron and Meme going back and forth was incredible. We got LPC, a little quiet earlier in the year, but some meaningful wins over some big competitors, including Raw, on the way to Mania, where he would become your hardcore champion. And it takes a lot to come out of one of those chambers, though he did come in the back half of that chamber, technically speaking. We're gonna knock out the Claw Cara real quick. Claw, to me, I think he is on to some big things in TSW, but I think in terms of rookie year, the lack of a huge title win, of course, outside the Intercontinental Championship taken from the Tony title, not a lot of meaningful wins there. I think Cara, great run with the mixed tag title right now. Haven't had a lot of defenses in a lot of other matches, has struggled in singles. So to me, I'm leaning Nuggy, baby. We're looking up Molly McNuggets, longest women's tag reign in history, is your women's heavyweight champion. And you think about the highest prize being one, Mech is a stone's throw from it, but they really had parallel years, you think about it. Really long tag title reign, of course, Mech with Raw and Nuggy with Raw's wife, Jen, as fitting as that is. But when you look at Money in the Bank versus actually winning the heavyweight championship, I think we got to give a little nudge to one Nuggy here. Congratulations. And of course, my vote is no short thing. Feel free to vote separate. Feel free to do write-ins wherever you want, but do know that the write-in probably won't win. I don't think Ron Paul's winning this election. And here we go. I believe this is the final category. Never mind, 2 more categories. Faction of the, you know what, let's end on faction. We'll jump down to this one real quick. Mixed tag group of the year, because I think this one's maybe a little bit easier. Steph and Roldy, of course, inaugural mixed tag champions. Good run to start, but really quiet the back half together and separate. The 2Ks, much like the Stonies, really good run as mixed tag champions. Not a long reign though, so to me, it's gonna be between the top 2. We're looking at AJ and Cara, and Team Tuggies and Tony and Huggies. End of the day, you know who's the longest mixed tag of the year and in history? You know who is still your mixed tag team champions? Ding, ding, ding. It's going to be Wall Street. It's going to be AJ and Cara. And speaking of Wall Street, faction of the year to wrap up the voting. I'll make sure these are a little bit better organized next year. I think, you know, much like the Oscars, you don't start with Best Picture. You start with Best Supporting Actress, and then you build up. You do the big category and a little smaller ones, and a big category and a little smaller ones. But here we go. The final category, faction of the year. So, didn't put in their circle, didn't think they deserved it. They broke up, they never really won anything. It was just Z-Rock, and then me and Kopak just doing our darndest. All right, so the congregation. At points, good flashes. Did start the year as trios champions, but the middle to late part of the year, very quiet. Great win at the end of the year, of course, taking a knockout of Team Canada, which we'll break down in a second. I think Congregation primed for a big year 3, but I think year 2, faction year, again, some of these other factions, no point in standing too long here. Team Canada, much the same way. You're like, that's tag team. No, it's a faction. It's Luch, it's Adam, it's Deke. It's a damn faction. There are other Canadians, they're not in there. It's those 3. And yeah, not a good year for them. Not a good year for them. Of course, Adam and Luch, some great tag title matches. Phenomenal. They were a great team, but sadly, Luchador has been unmasked. He has been forced to leave. TSW, no more Luchador. Well, we never got unmasked. No more Luchador. He's out. I wish I could have done that in ring. That would have been kind of fun. Imagine if they had that as video. Anyway, it's not those 2. All right, Team America. A lot of ups, a lot of downs. They broke up, they came back together. I think similar to Canada and Congregation, I don't think they did enough this year. America, though, did win the trios titles. Lost them, though, to one of the front runners here. Now, I think the top 3 are the 3 obvious choices. When we stack up title wins, when we stack up meaningful title wins, you know, every title has a meaning, but I'm talking the heavyweight, the you know, the major. You know, if you're all you have is the tag title, you know, that's tough. But when you get multiple titles, multiple divisions, multiple, you know, groups within the faction, I think that's where things get interesting. Also worth noting, the member success rate. I think that tends to be forgotten. Some of these members in these factions, a little quiet here. But let's dive on in. Just go top down. I want to go in an order. I can't. So we've got the Dargantics family here. A lot of ups, a lot of down. Dargan had a really strong year. Night Owl undefeated for quite some time. I believe the Dargantics family. I'm trying to think, it's 3-time trio champions this year. Held the mixed titles for a bit. Dargan had the BMI. Strong resume. Mania, they finished strong. I don't believe Hugs had any action, shockingly. I believe she is 1-0 at Mania from last year, though. I might be mistaken there. Apologies on that. Was she not booked? God damn. Anywho's-er. And of course, the quad trios win for the others. I do think the lack of single success for Pat and Night Owl does take it down a little bit. Of course, Tony, a storied history. They added Tony as well. So, it's a strong contender. Let's go to the Dog Pound. Of course, Dog Pound, I think, is a faction that does suffer from some members that had relatively unproductive years, some title matches, but we're looking at Do Not, Chico, and Mrs. Chico. Not a lot of action there. You know, Jen and Molly, Raw, and Mech really did the heavy lifting for this faction. But you talk about, you know, both tag title reigns, phenomenal reigns, longest women's tag reign in history. Of course, we're looking at the women's heavyweight champion, not once, but twice with both Molly and Jen. You got Money in the Bank, held by the Mecha Monster. What an unbelievable year. And I think Dog Pound is probably the closest stacked up to Wall Street. And let's break down Wall Street here, ladies and gentlemen. There was some trios action, very briefly, but they did win the trios titles. I think that was Khan, Craigie, and Vibe. Again, doing this live would be great because you guys give me the answers that I'm trying to find. But I think a big focus is top storylines. And I haven't really talked about top storylines with any of these factions. And I don't know if any storyline to me in any of these factions was quite on the level of LBJ versus Boxy. Now, Boxy and Raw early on this year, certainly, but it didn't have as many legs. I don't know if the Dog Pound was like really formed at that point. I don't think. You know, they were kind of still finding their footing. So you look at that, you look at LBJ, longest heavyweight title reign in history, over 100 days. And I think that each show, there was talk of Dargantics, there was talk of the Dog Pound, but I don't think I ever saw a show that someone didn't say Wall Street, didn't say Fall Street. I hear that every time there's an open spot, you go, well, that's going to be Wall Street, they're winning the match. I don't know if any faction had a stranglehold over TSW quite like Wall Street here in season 2. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back up to a full screen actiones. Let's get it. So, a little longer than I thought that'd take. We talked about a lot of this stuff, so that was a good breakdown. Of course, talked a little bit about a couple matches we're going to see in the debut episode of TSW. Again, we're hoping that's going to be next Thursday, which would be the 14th or something or other, something like that. Actually, might be exactly what it is, by the way. But you ask, well, how do I vote? How do I vote? So, unfortunately, because I'm not partner on YouTube, I don't believe I can include links. So, how you're gonna have to do this is you are going to go to JG over on Twitch. How do you find JG on Twitch?
Stream on Twitch is JG603.
Ah, thank you, Mick. Oh, it's great to be back, isn't it? So you'll go over there. You're gonna type !vote. Just the exclamation point, VOTE, very simple. That is going to bring up a link. You are going to be required to put in a username or a name. That way we're like, all right, obviously John Doe is cheating here. You know what I'm talking about? So just keep everything on the up and up. So the plan is you're probably seeing this on either Wednesday, probably on Wednesday. We'll probably close voting in a week. Also, by the way, I'll tweet this out. This will be in Discord. You won't only have to go to my channel while I'm off stream to do it. I should mention that. We're gonna shoot to get the results out for next Thursday or Wednesday, depending. And TSW will follow shortly thereafter, though. But we have to make sure the results show is out for at least a day, because obviously I'm gonna want to talk about some of that on the debut episode of TSW Season 3. Ladies and gentlemen, well, until I see you next time, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, notification activate, all that good stuff. Y'all been the best, y'all been too sweet, and I'll see you next time. Appreciate you. Bye.